Hello. Well, don't you just love it when you get the opportunity to give your input into a piece of music technology before it even comes to market? Well, you've got that opportunity right now. The video that you're about to watch is of a Eurorack module that has not come out to market yet. It's a very, very capable module. I mean, I can't wait for you to see this video. I mean, the thing's just crazy. It's got polyphony, it's got effects, it's got sample playback, it's multi-timbral. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the people behind it, Mayer EMI, they want your input just to make sure that it does what you want it to do before it comes to market. We'd love to hear your comments and your feedback on the inputs and the outputs, the modulation, the sound capabilities, the I/O, the use of effects, the sample playback, whatever it is. Leave it below in the comments for us. Then, in about 2 weeks' time, we're going to sit down live with you on my YouTube channel and the manufacturer, and we're going to discuss some of your ideas, your comments, and your feedback, and see if those things can maybe be implemented or tweaked or designed into the module before it comes to market. So as I say, this is a really exciting opportunity for you all, particularly those who are involved in using Eurorack modular. Enjoy the video. Look forward to seeing your comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all that kind of thing. And then I'll see you in about 2 weeks' time here live on air to discuss some of those comments and that feedback. Thanks everyone. Believe it or not, I'm looking at another Eurorack module. This one though might raise a few eyebrows, and the reason I say that is because it's multi-timbral, and you don't often hear that word associated with Eurorack. The module we're looking at actually is by the company Mayer EMI. It's called the M800 R2 VA Synthesiser, and this is a Eurorack polyphonic synthesizer module. It's, like I say, it's multi-timbral of 4 parts, and there's a polyphony of up to 16 voices, all shared by those 4 multi-timbral parts. Each of the 4 parts have got their own effects and filters and envelopes, and the whole path is stereo from start to finish. That means that the oscillators are stereo, the filters, the amps, the effects, everything is in stereo. You've also got this interesting arpeggiation and sequencing that is built directly into the module, and there's also clip launching, which you might be more familiar with the likes of DAWs like Ableton and Bitwig, where you've got this kind of clip launching of samples and beats, and this is all built directly into the module. I will say straight off the bat, this is a 32 HP module, so it's pretty chunky in terms of its size, and I'm actually running this off a separate power supply which was sent to me by the company, by Mayer, and this is the M880 PW. Now, this can be bought separately. This is a power-hungry module. It needs a specific power supply to ensure that it's getting all the power that it needs. It's strongly recommended by Mayer that you do not plug this into your Eurorack power supplies. I just don't think it's going to give it enough juice and enough juice for the whole system to run. So you're going to need a power supply like this. You can buy this one, or there are alternatives out there. Now, looking at the front panel, we've got MIDI in and out on the small TRS there. We've got a clock input. We've got stereo audio out, we've got stereo audio in. I will say that the audio in currently is not built into this this firmware, this software of this module, and the reason for that is because right now the developers, Mayer, are actually asking artists and the community out there what they would like to see is that audio input. You know, they really want to know what you might take advantage of by running audio into a module like this. Instead of just going away and writing what they think you're going to want, they actually want some of that feedback. So I think that's really cool that they're really listening to the people and the users out there to make sure that they implement that correctly. I've been told that there might be possibility of having some kind of vocoding built into this, or maybe some harmonization, but we're yet to see what that is. We've then got these endless rotary controllers down here, which are clickable. We've got a back button for jumping around the place. We've got a gate and CV out. So that's 1 CV in gate, 2 CV in gate. We've got a USB connection if we need it. And then we've got navigation buttons around the top here, which allows us to get to oscillators, filters, envelopes, LFOs, a kind of modular matrix, the part that you're playing with. So like I say, there's 4 parts with it being multi-timbral, so it allows you to jump between those. A master button to see the master overview, and then the voice button, which is what we're on now, which allows you, I think, really beautifully to be able to see the whole voice. And this is voice A, so part A if you think of it like that. And the cool thing about this is that you can actually see your signal flow. You can see your oscillators. Each voice is made up of 2 oscillators and a noise generator. The noise generator is sample based. It's got 3 LFOs that you can take advantage of. There's a mixer section before the filter, and you've got 2 filters actually, filter A and filter B, and then you've got your amplifiers, and you've got filter, amplitude, mod, generators there as well, envelope generators. You've also got a wave shaper down here, which is not, again, currently in use in this firmware, but I believe it's going to be implemented soon. Now, what's really cool about this is navigating. So let's say, for example, we want to have a look at what our oscillator 1 is. We can actually use this is a touchscreen. We just click on oscillator 1, bang, we're at oscillator 1. If we go back to our voice, we want to get to oscillator 2, we can jump back to oscillator 2. Again, if we want to look at our mixer section, we click on that and we can see how oscillator 1 and 2 is routed currently through filter A. So I think this is a really beautiful way to navigate around not just any synthesizer, but I mean, in a Eurorack module, I think that's really, really cool. It's very, very quick. The screen's very quick. And it's also one of those screens that seems to react really well to the finger touch as well. So you're not really going to be worrying about needing a stylus or anything like that. So yeah, let's jump in and have a listen to how it sounds. Now I'll just go over to our master section and we can see that we've got 4 parts here, A, B, C and D. And I'll just mute the other parts, so we're just listening to part A. While we're on this screen, you can see that you've got volume control over each part. So part A's volume, so on and so forth. They're muted, so we don't need to worry about that. And you can also select the parts here as well. So part A, we're into part A. This has actually brought us straight to a preset screen where we can actually just load up any preset that we wish, or start from a default. And there's all these categories here as well: bass, effects, organ, strings, leads. So let's jump into leads and just load up something from here. I know what's unison lead. Oh, that's the one. So as you'd imagine, a unison kind of lead sound. And if we go in and explore that by clicking on the oscillator, oscillator 1, we can see that this is made up of a saw wave here. And actually, as I said, with each voice, there's 2 oscillators. If we then actually go back to our voice and hit oscillator 2, we can see that there's also a wavetable oscillator as oscillator 2. Now, depending on how these are mixed, we can see that in our mixer. And we can see that 98% of the volume for oscillator 1 and 44 for oscillator 2. So we're mainly listening to oscillator 1. Let's just turn down oscillator 2 for a second. So we're just going to listen to oscillator 1. And we can jump back to oscillator 1 here just by clicking oscillator. Now this screen provides us with the actual waveform, which is an algorithm waveform, which is saw. It allows us to change things like the coarse and fine tune. To move between the values, so coarse or fine tune, you just click on them, and this dial is the associated dial there. If you want to change the algorithm, so at the minute it's saw, we can change that just here. We've got lots of different ones to try out. On this one, obviously you got some pulse width modulation. And you can modulate a lot of these parameters as well, which we'll look at. But if we just jump back over to our voice here, and we can see that we can actually change this from poly as well to mono as a sound, or to poly. Jumping back to the voice. And let's maybe go up. There we go. Now if we want to have a look at the filter of that, let's go over to the filter. And you notice that I clicked on filter and then pressed the first button. And that's because actually there's dual functions with these buttons to help you navigate around. Yes, you can navigate around using this and just jump to the filters here, or to filter B here. But let's say you don't want to use that button. You can actually click on filter and then button 1 to get to filter 1 or filter A. If you want to get to filter B, filter and then a second button to get to filter B, which are there. So filter 1, currently we've got this kind of Moog ladder filter, I guess, 12 dB slope, and you can change this to a low pass, 24 dB, bypass it. Lots of different ones to try out here. Some high pass, some band pass, and then we've got the filter cut off here, resonance. Again, I find that this dial needs to move a little bit quicker, and I was speaking to Mayer, and again this has been updated in a new version of firmware, so we're going to see this moving a lot quicker. In fact, if you click on this particular button when you're on the cutoff, you can actually go into very fine increments. So that's quite nice, clicking a button to kind of make it coarse or to make it fine, but I think the coarse needs to be even coarser. So let's jump back to the oscillator 1. Currently we've got this kind of pulse width modulation going on. Now this has got wavetables in it as well, so if you don't want to use your standard kind of algorithm, sort of sine, saw, pulse width, all that kind of stuff, we can actually change the oscillator by holding down on this button here, and it brings up all the available wavetables, and there's loads to try from here. And yeah, I'm a big fan of wavetables. Click the one that you want and then it's loaded in. And we can scan through and play around with this a little bit. We can change the way it morphs through. And it gives you this lovely 3D representation. You can actually click on the screen and it'll give you a 2D representation, as if you was kind of going through the scan, if you like. But I do like the 3D representation here. One thing that you'll probably see on the screen, hopefully you can see this all right, but you've got a yellow and a red line. Now the red line is actually the selected wave position as you're going through the waveform, and then the yellow is actually the output after the red line's kind of been through its spectral morphing, and the different types of spectral morphing can be selected here as I showed you before. So that's really cool. I really like this visual representation. You can also pan your oscillators here as well. So as I mentioned, there's 2 oscillators per voice, so you can pan one left and you can pan one right if you like. Just put that back to smear and go back to our filter. I should also mention here on the filter screen you can get to your envelope amount. So we put that 100%. We can then jump to our filter envelope, and again with these multifunction buttons, if we was to go envelope 1, takes us to our amp envelope generator. Envelope 2 takes us to our second one. Envelope 3 takes us to our filter envelope there. So we can increase the attack. Let's go down an octave. And in the same way, if we went to envelope 1 or amplitude envelope, a bit more release there. And there's different types of envelope generation in here as well. You've got your ADSR, AR, AD, and then you've actually got a looping AD as well, which is really cool. You can get some really interesting effects going on with this. Let's just leave it on ADSR for now. Now, staying in this kind of focus here, looking at the voice, the next tab along, we've got these tabs along the top here. The first tab allowed us to kind of choose a preset. The second one allows us to play around with the voice. This third one allows us actually to put some effects on. We've already got some delay, some reverb, and some dynamic manipulation going on here. And there's 10 slots per kind of voice. We can just turn those on and off here. So completely dry. Let's add the reverb back on. Make that a little bit more wet. Let's turn down the dry. Play around with the pre-delay. A bit more low end in there. There's actually some presets we can get to here as well. So if you want a larger hole, you can have that. Yeah, the bright club's pretty interesting. Again, with the large hole, let's just take that dry signal out completely. Let's have some of the wet. Let's add some of the kind of low end in there. Really nice. The mod delay that we've got on there, we'll leave that on. And if you want to put any other effects in, you just simply select a blank slot here, a parameter EQ. So that looks like a high, mid, low EQ, which is stereo. Again, all of this is stereo. Your stereo delay, you've got ping pong type or normal. We've got another filter that you can add on there. With some bass boost and some resonance, which is really cool. There's a tube amp for some distortion. As you probably know, I love a bit of distortion. Reverbs, we've got a reverb already on there. We've got some dynamic control there, which looks a little bit more like compressor with an attack, release, threshold, ratio. There's a phaser there. I mean, so far we've got some really interesting and powerful ways of manipulating the sound. We've got different oscillator types. You can have 2 different oscillators. You can have it polyphonic, you can have it monophonic, and you've got the 3 envelopes, you've got the 2 filters, and you've got all the effects to play with. And then of course, if you want to go crazy, you can jump into here, which is your modulation matrix, which is really cool. Again, if we scroll down, there are 24 slots here, and you can just simply add a source and a destination. So here you can see that we have the filter being affected by the filter envelope. We've got LFO1 changing filter A. So LFO1 is selecting filter A there, and you just increase the amount. If we want to change LFO1, let's go to LFO1, and we can see that LFO1 is this kind of triangle wave at the moment. We can change the rate, we can change the waveform. me just jump back to the effects here and just turn off the delay and reverb so you might be able to hear that a bit better. And of course you could sync this to a clock if you wanted to. Okay, let's have a look through some other presets and some other sounds. So we've been playing in the lead sounds here. We go back to categories, and I don't know. Let's have a look at some pads here. Jump pad. Let's have a look at what we've got going on here. So oscillator 1 is a simple sawtooth oscillator, and oscillator 2 is also a sawtooth as well. And maybe if we have a look at the voice here and jump to the mixer, we can see that one's at 80%, one's at 75%, and you can see that both of them are going through filter A at the moment. And you can choose that here, which oscillator goes through which filter. Really, really cool. I love the way you can visualize stuff. You know, when I was first getting into synthesizers, a lot of this did baffle me because you could not visualize it. You had to visualize it all in your head. And with this kind of, with this graphic, this GUI, I suppose, that you've got here, you can see everything that's going on. And for me, it just really helps me connect with a synthesizer a lot quicker and really understand what I'm doing a little bit quicker. Even if you've been doing this for a few years, this can be really helpful, believe me. So as these are both going through filter A, if we jump to filter A, we can see it's bypassed at the moment. Let's turn that into a Moog filter. I think these filters sound great. Actually, I'm really impressed with the actual voices themselves, I have to say. Let's maybe try out some other presets here. What's Paradise Path? Just turn it up. It's nice. And dub pad. Let's maybe try out some effects. HM stringy. Maybe some crunchy lead. And down at the bottom here, we've even got some kind of strings. Let's go for slow string. Wonder what that sounds like with a little bit of reverb here. So let's go and pop that on. Turn down some of the dry, a bit of the wet there, a bit more of the low end. Actually, let's go with a large haul. Quite like the large haul as well. Nice and thick. Oh, forgot to turn it on. There we go. Certainly nice and stringy. And lastly, let's have a look at some bass here. Let's have a look at some fat bass. Nice. Now, as I mentioned, there's more to this than just the voices, and so far we've just played with one voice. There are 4 voices, 4 parts, each with their own filters, envelopes and effects, and there's also a dedicated drum track, and as I mentioned earlier, the clip launching track as well. Let's have a look at that now. So while we're still on this section here, let's just jump over to these 4 tabs, and the first tab we come to is our kind of drum tab, and this is our drum channel, if you like, and we can actually load a preset from here, like I don't know, a techno kit. We have the volume for the drums here, and we've actually got a little grid which you might be familiar with, and we can actually choose, if we click on kick, we can choose any of our samples that we've got loaded into the system here, just by selecting. You can play around with pitch, the level of the kick, the end, and fade out of the sample. You can also add some kind of sidechain to it as well, but that's pretty much it as far as the drums go. It's the same on snare, it's the same on the hat, and all of these basically, it's just those parameters. So I don't want you to think that this is a fully fledged kind of drum sampler sequencer. It is good at what it does, but it's kind of basic. You know, you've got your volume, you've got your pitch to play around with, and that's kind of it. There's no effects on drums. So really, what you really need to do is work on your drums, get your drums sounding how you want them, maybe in your DAW or inside the modular, and then import them in as one shots and just have them ready to go. Now, if we jump over to here inside of clip, we come to this view, which is something you might all be familiar with if you use things like Ableton or Bitwig, where you've got this clip launched bass sequencing. That's basically exactly what this is. You've got your 4 parts here, so your 4 voices, if you like. You've got your drum channel, and then you've got CV1 and 2, which kick out CV and gate out of the respective 1 and 2 outputs here. You've got your master channels down here, a play button, your BPM, and so on and so forth. And it is simply, well, it's just the same as working with any clip launching. You click on a part. So this is now playing part B, and it's playing this very first clip in there, which is a sequence. If we jump over to part B and see what that is actually, so we click on part B, and let's have a look at the voice. This is the voice that it's currently playing, and we can play around with the tuning. Let's go to the second oscillator on there. Play around with that a little bit. Sounds like there's some effects on this. Yep, a stereo delay. And if we jump back over to our clip and we wanted now this section to come in, click on that. It'll wait before it starts playing. There we go. So you have this kind of clock-based launching to make sure that everything is in time, essentially. If you want to have a look at actually what this is playing, if we click on open and then click on one of the clips, we can see that it's playing, it's just playing this kind of, I think that's a C. And you can change the amount of bars it loops for, so I'll just make that last for 1 bar. If you wanted to change this and you had another MIDI sequence ready to go, you can actually save your MIDI sequence from your DAW, so you could just export it from Ableton or Logic or something like that and load it straight into here. Once you've got it in here, you can then go over to the MIDI file and you can then basically load up any of your MIDI sequences from here, and then it'll play it into here. Nice and simple, really, really cool. If we go back to our clip view, we'll take off open, so it means that anything we press play on now, it won't open. And let's click on number 2 and it'll launch everything along there. So we should hear some drums now. 3. So there we go. And this is just a preset that's in there. Now if we wanted to play around with this a little bit, let's just mute everything except for part B. Let's jump over to our drums, and yeah, let's just make this 16 steps. Oh, there we go. Again, if we want to just change the sound of synth B, we could do that in real time. Sounds great. And of course, if we want things to stop, we can hit the master up here, or individual tracks, and it'll drop those out, and again that'll be quantized. Now another interesting thing you can do in the clip launching is, instead of using sequences, you can actually generate something called, or what they call, arpeggiators, which kind of work like your typical arpeggiator and allow you to actually play them as part of the sequence, so it becomes a bit more performance orientated. If we look at this preset that I've loaded up here, you can see you've got the same layout, but these are actually, instead of being sequences in here, they're actually arpeggiations. So if we click on our first part here, you'll see that we've got a clip which contains an arpeggiation which is built over 8 steps. This subst is basically the way that the voice is allocated. It's playing in a pitch up sequence kind of thing. It's synced to the beat, and it's playing 16th. You can see the tempo there as well that you can get to. Now you can do some really interesting things here, but before I go into all of this, if I just now go back to our clips and I launch that clip, so I turn off open, launch that clip there, 1A, wait for it to go solid green, it's now playing that arpeggiation. On part A, if we go to part A, we can actually then go and have a look at the voice, have a look at the oscillator here. You can play around with that. But let's go back to our clip and let's open that up. And there's things that we can play around with this. So if we go to this tab here, we've got assign, which basically assigns what's played back on each of the 8 steps. So there's your 8 steps, and I played a C chord, so you've got C, E and G in there. So you can say basically on each one of these steps play either the C, E or G, or in fact the actual chord. So on steps 3 and 4, it's going to play the chords, and then it's playing those other notes there. We can also play around with the modes here, so we can actually turn off particular steps, or we can hold them. And we can play around with semitones. I won't play around with this too much because I don't want to mess up the scale. You can change the octaves. Again, this is all shown you the 8 steps, so we can change the octaves there. You can play around with the velocity here. I love the way you can just kind of glide your hand over here, which is pretty cool. And that velocity, by the way, is if we go to our envelope here, our amp envelope, will respond to the envelope that you've got assigned here. So when it's on 100%, it's going to listen to that in there. Let's go back into here and see what else is going on. Now we've got 3 other tabs: CVA, CVB, and CVC. And they're not currently allocated to anything, but you can internally route them as a modulation source. So if we draw in some kind of shape like that for CVA and go to our modulation matrix, we can choose CVA from here. Where is it? There it is. And we can assign it to well, anything we want really. Amplitude modulation of oscillate 1 maybe. Maybe we will apply it to the filter, and of course turn up the amount, or you can go negative. Again, I'd like to see that this moves a little bit quicker. And if we go to filter A, we can see it's actually bypassed, it's not doing anything. So let's turn that into a low pass 24 dB there, add some resonance. Try some different ones here. And so basically what we're seeing there is this affecting that filter. And we've got another 2 here, CVB and CVC, which you can get to again in this modulation matrix. So you could just assign them to whatever you want in there. So what you've got really here is a really interesting way of playing around with arpeggiation, playing around with the sequences and the notes that you've got in there, as well as clip launching as well. You know, you can have a combination of sequences and arpeggiation and the drums and CV1 and 2 all running from inside of that sequencer. So as you can imagine, with all those different parameters in the arpeggiation, playing around with the semitones and the octaves and the velocity, whether you're on key hold or whatever else it's doing, you can get some really interesting results out of this straight away. And of course, if you're happy with it, you just hit save and it'll save everything internally for you. In terms of the size, yes, it is 32 HP, and yes, you will have to get another power supply. But for its power and what it offers you, I mean, this might negate the need to take a laptop on stage if you're still doing something like that. I should also tell you that in addition to the 2 outputs, there is an expander in the works which will give you another 8 outputs as well, in addition to the 2 there. So if that's a worry, which I think it was for me initially, that I would want probably separate outs, because I'd maybe like to process some of those sounds externally, particularly some of the drums as well, you know, smashing through some of maybe the wave folders or some of the distortions and things like that I have. Currently these retail for about €1,500. The power supply on its own is going to be around €200. And I guess the expander will also be more money. So yeah, you do have to think about this, but I think I'm really impressed with not only the functionality but the sound, more importantly, and what this offers you. I've had great fun working with this, and I'm really looking forward to playing around with the new firmware and seeing where they actually take this, particularly when I mentioned at the beginning of this video they want some input on the actual audio input, no pun intended there, as to how people might want to use that in the future. So I hope this has been useful for you. I hope that you might go check out Mayer's website. You may also want to go check out the big brother of this, which is a standalone VA synthesizer. It's basically the big brother of this. It runs exactly the same audio engine, the same kind of touchscreen facility, and the same layout, the same routing, the same effects. It's the same, but it's a desktop version. Then you might also want to go check that out at their website as well. And please do go join their Discord channel, where they'll want some input from people as to, you know, where to take this Eurorack module as we move forward. Anyway, thanks for listening, and if you've got any comments or any questions about this, do leave it in the chat below, and I'll try to get round to them for you. But for now, I'll say goodbye. Thanks. So there you go, there's my thoughts and opinions and an overview of what the module currently does. As I say, we'd love to hear your feedback. I think it's a really, really cool module. I certainly think there's things that could be maybe tweaked and changed, that's for sure. But we're really, really excited to hear your ideas as well. So do join me and the manufacturer in about 2 weeks' time here on this YouTube channel, and we'll see what can and can't be done, and also to hear a little bit more about the module from the manufacturers themselves as we see this journey of it coming gradually to market. Thanks everyone, take care.